In this video, we're going to answer some beginner level ASP.NET Core interview questions. I would expect every ASP.NET Core developer, regardless of their skill level, to be able to answer each of these questions very easily. So brush up before heading to your interview. Let's go. ASP.NET Core is a free and open source cross-platform high-performance web framework from Microsoft for building modern cloud-based web applications. Some of the things that I think of as the key features of ASP.NET Core are the fact that it's cross-platform. It will run on Windows, Linux, and Mac OS. It has a lot of options for hosting, including Kestrel, IIS, Nginx, and Apache. It also has support for containers, so you can use things like Docker or Kubernetes. It's very high performing. A lot of tests that I've seen show that ASP.NET Core outperforms every other web framework out there, but you have to take that with a grain of salt. It really depends on who's doing the testing. There's a unified and completely configurable request and response pipeline in ASP.NET Core through the use of middleware. It has extensible globalization and localization support. It's really easy to set up, and it has support for local resources for individual pages and global resources for the entire application. You also have a choice of your client-side delivery technology. For example, if you need an API, you can use Web API. If you want to use a single page application or SPA, that has support. There's Razor Pages, MVC, and there's also Blazor. So plenty of options. Some of the things that I think of when it comes to advantages are the fact that ASP.NET Core is cross-platform. ASP.NET is not. ASP.NET Core is more lightweight. The .NET Core framework may actually be bigger than ASP.NET, but it has a lot more modularity built in, so you don't have to take the whole kitchen if you just want the kitchen sink. ASP.NET Core leaves pretty much all functionality open for configuration or change. ASP.NET was kind of heavy-handed in many ways. And finally, ASP.NET Core has much better performance than ASP.NET, much better. Kestrel is a cross-platform web server for ASP.NET Core, and if you are using a Visual Studio ASP.NET Core project template, it is the default web server. Middleware are software components that are added to the application pipeline to customize the way requests are handled by the application. Every middleware component can inspect, modify, or terminate the request pipeline, and this allows us as developers to add custom behavior to the application. Some of the better known middleware are routing, HTTPS redirection, static files. You'll find those in pretty much every application, and authentication. Razor Pages are a page-focused development model in ASP.NET Core for building web user interfaces. Each Razor page consists of a CS/HTML file that contains HTML markup and embedded code, and this simplifies the development of small-scale applications, especially by combining the UI and backend logic in a single location. Dependency injection is handled by the configure services method in startup.cs or the startup functionality of program.cs. And instead of having every object in your application know how to create their own dependencies, you can use constructor injection to easily deliver the dependencies that each object needs, and only having a single location where you configure those services. This is important for creating maintainable software because it promotes loose coupling and maintainability and makes your application more testable. And I've got a quick example of dependency injection in action. I've got a simple logic class here named customer logic, and this class implements the iCustomerLogic interface. And down here we have one method that's returning a hard-coded list of 10 customers. In program.cs, I'm going to use builder.services on line 17 with add scoped to wire up that dependency. What this line of code is doing is telling the app that if I ask you for customer logic, what I actually want is customer logic. Next, in the customer controller class, there's a couple of things. The constructor is asking for that customer logic object, and I'm saving that off to underscore customer logic, which is declared on line 9. Then in the index method or action, I'm using underscore customer logic and setting the list of customers to that return value, and then returning it to the page as the index pages model. In the index.cs HTML file, I've set the model of the page at the top to a list of customers, and I'm just looping over that list and printing out the values of customer.id and customer.name. Next, in the browser, if I navigate to /customers, the list of 10 customers are printed out. This is all the work that's needed. It's just so easy to set up right out of the box. When you use the ASP.NET Core project templates from Microsoft in Visual Studio, ports are randomly assigned when a new project is created, but those can be changed in the launch settings.json file in the web projects properties folder. Web API supports a couple of different formats, including JSON, XML, and plain text. The response format is determined based on the accept header sent by the client in the HTTP request, or it can be explicitly specified by the client using content negotiation techniques. Yes, hot reload has been available in ASP.NET Core since version 6. And here's your friendly reminder to like and subscribe. We post new videos often for software developers, software engineers, and software architects. Thanks. Errors and exceptions can be handled by using middleware components such as useExceptionHandler, which intercepts unhandled exceptions and returns an appropriate response back to the client. You can also create your own custom exception filters to handle specific exceptions. ASP.NET Core MVC and ASP.NET Core Web API serve different purposes. MVC is used for building web applications that generate HTML responses, while Web API is used for building HTTP services that can serve JSON, XML, or other non-HTML content to clients. Routing maps incoming requests to endpoints, which are typically controller actions that are based on the URL patterns specified in the route configuration. Route parameters can be used to extract values from the URL and then pass them to the controller actions as method parameters. Routing is set up and configured in the startup.cs or program.cs file. It can also be tweaked in controllers with routing specific attributes or decorators at the class or method level that provide further instructions to that controller or action on how to handle specific URL patterns. The configure services and configure methods in startup.cs and program.cs are used for configuring your custom services for dependency injection, as we've already seen, and configuring and adding middleware such as logging or authentication to the middleware pipeline. It's also used for configuring routing in your application. Authentication is handled with authentication middleware, and this validates the identity of users. Authorization is also handled by middleware and is activated by using different authorization attributes or decorators to controllers or actions inside of controllers. You can configure most aspects of both authentication and authorization using fluid configuration and applying configurable policies. CORS is an acronym for Cross-Origin Resource Sharing. It's a security feature inside of web browsers, that controls access to resources from different origins. This allows clients from different domains to access API resources more securely. As many other things in ASP.NET Core, this is enabled by adding middleware and can be configured through Core's policies. ASP.NET Core gives us a couple of different options when it comes to storing and managing application settings. First, there's appsettings.json, or you can use user secrets. There are environment variables. There are other stores available, but if you can't find one that matches your needs, you can just write your own. And these are great for storing things that are environment specific, like database connection strings or API keys. And these values can be easily accessed using configuration providers. By default, most projects handle logging with the built-in Microsoft Extensions logging library. This is a flexible and pretty extensible logging infrastructure that supports logging to many different mediums, including flat files in the file system, database tables, or many others. And if none of those satisfy your needs, you can just create your own custom sync. And you configure logging in the configure services method of startup.cs or in program.cs. Tag helpers are server-side components that are used in Razor views to dynamically generate HTML. They look a lot like HTML elements, but they run server-side code to generate the output. This simplifies the syntax and enhances the readability of Razor views. NuGet is the de facto standard when it comes to package management for the .NET ecosystem. It's great for easily discovering, installing, and managing external libraries and dependencies in your projects. And NuGet supports both public and private package repositories. And that's a wrap. You can expect more ASP.NET Core interview questions from me soon. And if you enjoyed this video, you might also enjoy this one for beginner level Angular interview questions. Until next time, keep coding.